So I will just introduce myself. My name is Laura Laren. I am the VP of Allcare IT, along with my amazing husband, because I can't get enough of him. We work together. He's the CEO of Allcare IT. Andy sits on many advisory boards. For those of you that do know him, he is amazing with technology. He It's his passion protecting businesses. So you'll see that come out when he speaks. I'm not a technical person. I take care of more of the business aspect of things. So you'll see that when I speak. And then we're going to have Landon introduce himself when he starts his portion of the webinar. So why don't we get started? Awesome. So why are you here? You are a business leader and we're talking about IT. Why doesn't our IT support just take care of this? Well, because this is the big takeaway from the webinar. Cyber risk equals business risk. So before, IT used to be just about keeping computers running. That's not the case anymore. Tech has kind of spiderwebbed right into every aspect of a business. And with that has come many benefits, but also can create risk or dangers. So, like never before, if your IT is not protected, it has tremendous business effects. We're going to talk about some of those, but these are things that a leadership team must look at, must understand, and then make strategic decisions to deal with it. So it cannot just be left up to your IT. Without executive oversight, IT could secure the wrong priorities. So simply put, we're not going to leave that in the hands of our IT to decide. We have some of our own clients on this webinar today. The same is true if you're working with us. We follow your lead, we educate, we show you the concerns, how you can protect yourself. But when it comes down to it, you're the ones that have to decide what you're going to do. So never can we offload IT to someone else, whether it's a managed service provider or an in-house IT team, whatever it is, you have to be involved as somebody who has such an interest in your business. Another point is that, like never before, we're seeing more compliance and regulatory requirements. And those are really unique to each business. So your IT support may not understand the other operations of your business and which compliances you would need to meet. So these require more executive leadership. And if you do fail to meet these compliances, it's not IT that's going to suffer. They are not coming after you for the liability or the IT department for the liability and the fines. It is the business and the business executives. So that's why it's so important that you're involved in this. Thank you. So then where does your IT support fit into this whole puzzle of business risk? Well, it's their job to execute your instructions. You need to set a strategic direction for your IT department to follow that will align with your business goals. It's likely that perhaps your IT person is amazing at technology, but do they understand business? Do they understand your business goals? That's not really their job. So it's a relationship that has to be very close and they need to be given direction. Just like with, your marketing department, you tell them their goals, your goals, and they execute. Just a point about digital transformation as it is changing, that's going to affect every department within your business. And they may not have that overview of how it works. So you need to be involved there. And the last point, if the leadership team is involved in cybersecurity. It helps set this culture of being cyber aware. It shows your employees that this is something that's really important. And that's going to make, if they feel it's important, they're going to be more careful and they're going to be protecting your business. And you need to be protecting your business too, when you're deciding which emails to click on, that kind of thing. So it's really important. It's not just a side item anymore. IT touches everything. So let's take a little bit of time now to look at how cyber incidences can affect a Canadian business, so you can understand a little more about how cyber risk is a business risk.
Thanks, Laura. So yeah, I often think of cybersecurity as a culture thing, just like health and safety is a culture thing. So has to come from the top. So let's look at this next illustration here. Often we have a false sense of security. Let's say that we live in a nice part of town and someone has their house broken into. The neighbors themselves rally against with their neighbor and try and be extra vigilant. There's never a stigma related to a house being broken into. Yet when it comes to companies, they think that their business is in a nice part of town on the internet, and that they aren't at risk from different cyber threats. But that's because nobody really talks about these threats. They sort of are hidden, and you hear them on the news, but generally it's only large companies that you hear about on the news. And so this creates a false sense of security. And so small businesses think that they're in the nice part of town and that they're safe, but really it's like that second picture there. They're in a very high crime part of town when they're sitting on the internet. They just don't know about that because nobody really talks about it. And so we really have to destigmatize these cyber events so that people actually understand what their risks are. So if we look at some stats here, it's interesting, these stats. So last year in 2024 in Canada, 44% of organizations reported that they had an incident of some kind within that past year. And so it is happening a lot. It's just not really being talked about. 28% of organizations faced ransomware attacks within the past year. And so that's really disruptive. Ransomware attacks quite often take down a company for days or weeks. And we see there that that's a rise from 2021, where it was only 17%. And then that last one, 79% of organizations actually paid the ransom. So oftentimes the ones that are doing the ransom notes know more about the business than often the business owner knows about. They'll get into everything. They'll get into QuickBooks and they see what's going on with the business. They know how much cash flow they have and they know exactly what to ask for. And so oftentimes organizations have a choice of either going out of business or paying that ransom. And the ransom is only part of the costs that are there. So this stat was from IBM's cost of a data breach. So last year in Canada, they said that the cost on average was $6.3 million. And as you see in the little chart that's there, that cost has gone up since 2018. Every year it continues to rise. And that's just an average. Some companies it's into hundreds of millions, and then other companies it's in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. But on average, 6.3 million. So a lot of money, very disruptive, and it's really across every sector. We'll see here that this is a slide from the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity. And so as you see, every sector across the board it is affected. And so it's not like it's just one sector like finance. There are certain sectors that have it a little worse than others, but every single sector is hit. And oftentimes we'll get questions about, what the size of the organization, because on the news we only hear about organizations that are very, very large. Here's an interesting stat here from eSentire, which is a Canadian company. They show that the majority of the payouts, the majority of the costs are for companies between 1 million and 25 million in revenue. And so we often don't hear about those on the news. We're hearing about large breaches, but the fact of the matter is that the majority of them are with businesses under $25 million. And so that really affects, the majority of companies here in Kingston. It's interesting when you look at the costs that are global costs. To me, this is just absolutely staggering. If you look at cybercrime as a whole, it's the third largest economy behind US and China. So the next largest economy is Germany. They're at $4.6 trillion and Japan is at $3.9 trillion. Cybercrime is at $10.5 trillion for 2025. So these are just staggering statistics. So in 2015, those costs were $3 trillion. In 2025, it's at the 10.5. So it's the third largest economy in the world. So absolutely staggering statistics here on cybercrime. So we'll pass it over to you now, Laura.
Awesome. So that's just sort of gives us an idea of what can happen, to understand the risk that is out there. So then the next step is to decide how your specific business will approach it, because there's no one size fits all. So factors that you might consider is the potential cost of how much you will lose versus how much you can spend on security. Obviously, that's different for every business. If you're the government, you have unlimited amounts of money. When you're starting out, you have maybe almost nothing to spend on security. So that's going to change how much you spend, but there's more to lose as a company grows and has more. The likelihood of a cyber event occurring, there's sort of a little matrix down here in the corner that you can measure every risk that could affect your business, every cyber risk, or on a whole, how likely you're going to be impacted and how severe the impact will be. And each business will be different. So you have to look at this and decide what the risk is for you. Another factor is what kind of compliances you're subject to, depending on the industry that you're in and who you serve. For example, if you sell to either the Canadian or American Department of Defense, you have a lot of requirements you must meet or you lose your business. So we've had some clients that will ask, is the business that we get from the DoD worth all the security that we will have to spend? If it's 80% of your business, yeah, it is. If it's 5%, maybe you look elsewhere for a different client. That's a decision that you have to make. So it depends on what you're subject to. All right, I'm ready for the next slide, Andy. Thanks. So that's your appetite for risk. Are you a gambler with your business? Probably not, but it depends where you are. So security and convenience, something to consider at the opposite ends of each other. So when you implement more security in your business, it means you're going to be not only spending more, but it will be less convenient. Maybe you have employees that are annoyed that they have to, do their MFA when they sign in, and there's a few hoops to jump through, and I raise a stink. Those are things to consider. Although I can guarantee you that that's how people are, and they get used to it and move on. So just things to consider. Where's the balance that you and your board of directors or the other people on your C-suite team, where are they comfortable?
So then when it comes to risk, there are a number of things that we can do with that risk. We can mitigate the risk in a variety of different ways. So the first one is to accept the risk. So if you know what the risk is and that it fits within your something that you can deal with, then you accept it. For example, all of us drive. And so when we get in our car, we're all accepting a certain level of risk. But the ability to drive and get places, we accept that risk because that's something that we need to do. And so businesses will accept a certain amount of risk, and in order to do what they need to do in business. The second way is to avoid the risk. So knowing what the risk is and then making a choice to completely step away from that risk, that's a good option as well to mitigate that risk. The third thing is to transfer the risk. And so having insurance is a way of transferring the risk. So if we have car insurance or we have cyber insurance, we're transferring that risk to the insurer. And the insurer looks at the risk and they say, this is how much it's going to cost you because we think that there's a certain amount of risk there and we may have to pay out. And so another example of that would be with payment cards. So anybody that takes credit cards in their business, they have to adhere to PCI compliance, and so they're transferring that risk to the banks in order to not store the credit cards locally themselves. They're having the banks store those things for them. And then the fourth thing is to reduce the risk. So either with physical controls or with digital controls, we can reduce that risk. So, for example, putting in a firewall at the edge of your network so that certain things can't come into your network from the internet, that reduces that risk. Putting multi-factor authentication in place reduces that risk. And so these are some of the ways that we can mitigate risk, and we all have to choose how we do that.
Thank you. So just to give an illustration of how we can reduce risk, we can look at a car. Andy talked about how when we drive, we accept there's a certain amount of risk. We can never guarantee we're not going to get in an accident. Can we reduce the risk? Yes, we can layer different security features, right? So not just our seatbelt and our airbags and our anti-lock brakes. Car manufacturers are always considering, all the different angles that a car could maybe be hit from, and they implement many layers of security. And that's the same with cybersecurity. It is not a one and done approach. We layer different security measures on top of each other. Also, we can change our behaviors that will help reduce the risk. So we can keep our speed down. We can have cyber insurance, or sorry, yes, we can have car insurance, which I feel like cyber insurance, right? So it's very similar. Also, when we talked about our risk for appetite or our appetite for risk, it's very similar. So, a family man that's bringing home his new infant, he's probably going to want to buy a minivan with like the top safety ratings. He wants to keep that baby so safe. It's so valuable. A young guy, he just wants a car, that's going to go fast and that looks good. So different buyers are going to look for different things, and different business owners will have different risk. Just have one deadbolt on our front door. We are going to have, maybe locks on our windows, maybe we'll have an alarm system, maybe we'll have a guard dog. It depends how safe you want to feel as a homeowner. Some, if you live in the country, often people leave their doors open. They're not concerned. If you are really concerned and if you have a high risk, you're going to do more things. Maybe you're going to put a fence around the building. So there are higher security guards, exterior lighting. There's all kinds of things you can do to make that home or that building safer. It just depends how much you want to put into it.
Thanks, Laura. So just like Laura was talking about with the car, no matter what car you buy, whether it's the most basic car, there are certain things that are standard. They're basic in there. Airbags and seat belts are things that every single car has, no matter what. And then if you get a high-end car, it may have a lot more safety features. And so same thing in cybersecurity. There are some basics that are absolutely necessary. And then we can layer onto those things and mitigate the risk even better. So I'm not going to go through all of these different things, but these are a number of different ways that we can help secure companies and make sure that that risk is mitigated. When we look at some of the costs that that would be to a business, there are many financial costs if there is a cyber incident. There are things like lost revenue. Companies stop dealing with that particular company. They may be down for a certain period of time. As you see at the very bottom, the average downtime is 16 days. So that means that some companies get up and running a little quicker, maybe 7 days. Other companies, it may take a month and a half. And so, how long can your business be under because of a cyber incident? There are companies that stop dealing with a company when they've heard that they've had an incident. They don't want to put their credit card in any longer. They don't want to go to their website anymore because there's a fear of them getting infected because of what happened with that company. And so there's lots of different financial costs. There's additional costs to consider. Landon is going to get into a lot of this with the cyber insurance side, but companies, whether they have cyber insurance or not, sometimes there's ransom payments if they get hit. There's the recovery costs of getting back up and running. There's the what's called incident response, or the ones that have to come in and assess what the problem was, how the bad guys got in. Because you have to figure that out first before you can fix the problem, then fix the problem and get back up and running. There may be legal costs, ramifications like compliance and regulation. And so lots of these costs add up. And so a lot of the costs depend on the type of data that you have. If you're in the medical sphere, you've got what's called PHI, so personal healthcare information, but every company has PII, personal information. And so they may have things like credit cards as well. And so the number of records really makes that add up. And as you see there, the average cost for insurance is in Canada is $298 per record. So the more records you have, the quicker those things add up.
Okay. A couple other factors to consider that increases the damage of an incident is one is the reputational damage. We have all gotten those emails that say, "Hey, sorry, we've had an incident and your information might be out there." And how does it make us feel? Well, we may question whether we're going to work with that company anymore. And that's something to consider is, do we have a lot of small customers or do we have a few large ones? If we break that trust, it hurts to lose small clients. It really hurts to lose, 2 of your 5 large clients. So obviously 1/3 of businesses say that it did hurt their customers' trust. So this is an important factor to consider. The next slide is coming. Similar stat, Canadian stat, 35% of the total cost of a cyber breach is reputational damage. So that that's pretty high, and something to consider that it never goes away. I remember talking to one of our clients who mentioned still when he receives an email from a business associate, even after years, he does not forget about the incident that they had, and he wonders, should I be reading, opening his email? Should I be clicking on their links? So those are things that you really want to protect. You want to show your clients that their data is very important to you, just as your relationship with them is important to you.
So this is
Oh, we had a fast one. Sorry.
yeah, exactly. Oh, I guess I didn't prepare that properly. So, well, we'll get right into this. So, one of the biggest areas of compromise is with what's called business email compromise. So, this is where somebody impersonates somebody inside the organization. There's a few different ways that that happens. They either, if there isn't enough security on the way that the email is set up, somebody could just impersonate you directly and send emails to your internal staff or to your clients or to your vendors pretending to be you. And the one that gets that email may not even know that it didn't come from you. So oftentimes these are things like wire transfer requests or a vendor payment change or fake invoices or documents that are sent. And it's a way that somebody can impersonate that person, get data from them, often change bank accounts and get payments that are sent out to a different company. And so CEO fraud is another area, or a lawyer impersonation. So these are the types of targets that happen all the time. And so this is the number one way that companies often get breached is through a business email compromise. And it could very well be that it's something like a T4 or a wage statement that's sent to an employee saying that, we need to change your banking information. And so the company ends up paying out to something that shouldn't be there. This has happened many, many times in Canada, even with large cities. The city of Saskatoon in 2019 got hit, and they ended up having to pay out a huge amount of money to the wrong company, and then still were on the hook to pay the right company afterwards. And so this is something that affects lots of different companies, unfortunately.
All right. So we don't want to make this a technical webinar, so we're just going to sort of glaze over the next four largest dangers where companies are usually affected. It's a whole other webinar talking about how to protect yourself, but we wanted to keep this more of a thought leadership webinar and how we can protect our businesses in that way. If you want to chat about technical things, that's not a problem for us. So cybersecurity danger number two, ransomware. So, the hacker locks down your data and you cannot get it back until you pay a ransom. Often businesses have to decide, do they just walk away? Do they pay the ransom? Often they know how much to ask because they have access to your computer systems and they have access to your banking accounts. So they know what's in there. Number three, unpatched software and vulnerabilities. These are known vulnerabilities that the Microsoft or third-party, companies, they put out patches. If those are not up to date, they're known, the cyber criminals know them, so they immediately start exploiting them. So they need to be done right away. Number four, password attacks. This is one of the most common things we find when we do a security audit. Password hygiene is very poor, and unfortunately, because of we can only remember so many things. So usually one password is sort of a play on the next one, right? We might change 2024 at the end to 2025. So once a hacker gets one password, they can do a lot of damage with it, with the idea that likely our passwords are similar and they have software to create a whole lot more damage with that. And he's going to talk about the fifth one a little bit more because this is a newer one and it's big and it's growing.
Yeah, we're going to have an upcoming webinar just on AI and all the fabulous features of AI, but some of the things to be wary about as well. So AI is something that a lot of us use, and it's got some fantastic abilities. However, with every new technology, the bad guys also use it, and so there's a lot of issues with deep fake technology. So somebody can impersonate somebody's voice just by cloning a little bit of their voice and then they can, call somebody's grandmother and say, hey, I'm in jail. Can you send me some money? But it happens at a much larger scale as well. Deepfake even is affecting videos now. There was a case not too long ago where a company was buying another company. Somebody got onto the call. They thought that they were having a Zoom call with their boss. It looked like their boss. It sounded like their boss. It was very hush hush. Transfer all of this money to buy this company. Meanwhile, the whole thing was a ruse and it was fake. So these things are really big and dangerous. The bad guys use AI to create new malware. So we use AI to try and stop the bad guys, but the bad guys also use AI to create new malware. And then the phishing side of things, it used to be that you could look at emails and you could see bad grammar in it. Things weren't translated properly, and you knew that it was spam. That's not the case anymore. The graphics and the verbiage is bang on, spot on. So that's unfortunately where the bad guys are working as well. When it comes to AI, there are guardrails that are needed. So we won't get into it too much on this webinar, but guardrails are needed. Samsung not too long ago had some of their engineers putting up proprietary code into ChatGPT, and unfortunately, they were training the model, and others could come into ChatGPT and ask for some of that thing, some of the data that Samsung put out, and they were able to get some of their code and find out things that they were able to do in the future. So these things are really powerful and really amazing, but at the same time, they can be dangerous.
That is true. So just recap, cyber risk equals cyber, I gotta read it when I say it. Cyber risk equals business risk. So that's why this is, something that your leadership team needs to educate themselves about and then be able to give the proper instructions to your IT support. The whole subject reminds me of this saying that my grandmother always said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it is so true that the cost of protecting yourself up front and the effort and the pain are so much less than if you are dealing with an incident. They are expensive and they are so painful. Andy we have a team here that deals with responding to cyber incidences, and we will have business owners crying on the phone. It is not somewhere that we want to see anybody go through. So now is the time to take a look at it. And just going to throw up our contact information on the next slide if you need it. The next step of education, we do have, Andy, can you put up the next slide? We do have a complimentary security assessment to help you see where you might be vulnerable. We're happy to do that for anybody that's on the webinar today. But one of the ways that you can transfer your risk is by having cyber insurance. And we have a lot of clients that ask, should I have cyber insurance? So we thought it would be great to partner with Landon. We've used Landon for a long time for our insurance. He's incredibly knowledgeable and super responsive. He always gets back to us right away with our questions. So we love working with him. So there's nobody better we could do this with. So I'd like to introduce Landon to you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Andy. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, let's jump into some cyber insurance. So before we do so, I'll give you a little introduction. So I've been here at McDougall for the last 10 years. And although most of us are generalists at this office, and actually most of our offices, I do like to focus on cyber insurance and professional liability insurance for all different types of businesses in many different types of industries. I have an undergrad business from Laurier and a master's from Schulich, and I'm a loving husband and proud father of three young boys that are all under or five and under. So it's a lot of fun at home right now. All right. So why is cyber insurance important? I guess you can kind of take a step back and say, why is any insurance important? And obviously the answer is because it protects us from unforeseen losses that we are not expecting, and ensures that we're not stuck with a big bill if something unexpected does happen. So, and the reason I have a picture of a house up here is even though you have, smoke alarms and security alarms and you lock your door, you still buy insurance for your house and your belongings in case something bad does take place. And so similarly with cyber insurance, even if you follow the most sophisticated cybersecurity practices, or you work directly with a great cybersecurity company like AllCare, an unexpected loss can still happen, and you'll be in a much better position if it's an insurance company that's footing that bill and guiding you through the process and getting you back on your feet than if it's just you and your own employees trying to deal with all that internally. And I know obviously most of the insurance that we buy these days and in history have always been, for our house, our cars, our health, it's all easy to understand and fairly easy to grasp because it's all tangible, stuff that we can see, that we can feel. Now, the internet created a cyber world that is obviously much less tangible and harder to understand from a risk exposure perspective. But the risks are definitely still there, and the losses can be just as devastated financially as losing your home to a fire or totaling your car in an accident. So that's why I do think cyber insurance these days is just as important as any other insurance that you purchase for your business, because those risks are so prominent now. So in terms of cyber policy, every good, robust policy has three parts to it. So there's what we call the third-party coverage, first-party coverage, and then cyber crime coverage. So third-party coverage would be if one of your clients or customers sues you because of a breach that you've had and because their information has been released to the public. Then there's first-party coverage, which protects you against your own financial losses that are associated with a breach and the costs associated with dealing with that. And then what's considered cyber crime coverage is when you have a direct theft of your funds because of a breach. But some of the few things that cyber is not going to cover, it's not going to cover any, software or hardware defects that you have. So poor coding or defective products or bugs like that. However, if those things lead to a covered cyber event, then obviously coverage would still apply. Cyber coverage and cyber insurance is not going to cover any intentional insider attacks by owners or executives. Obviously, this is pretty self-explanatory. And then it's not going to cover any prior known incidents. So if you are aware about a breach or vulnerability that took place before you set up your policy and you didn't disclose this to the insurance company, then obviously there's going to be no coverage for this. All right, so let's just jump right in. So with your policy, the third-party coverage section usually is set up into three different buckets. So there's security and privacy liability, regulatory liability, and media liability. And for all of these, your insurance company will pay for the cost of legal defense, settlements, compensatory damages as a result of your liability to a customer, client, or any other third party whose information has been leaked or taken because of a breach. So, just going through some of these quickly, with regards to security and privacy, this would be a lawsuit that comes about because of any unauthorized access to your customer or client's data, or if they've been able to pull confidential information that should be private. It would also protect you against lawsuits that happen because your system sent out a virus to one of your clients or customers' networks. If you fail to provide proper notification if a data breach does happen, and as Laura and Andy mentioned, in Canada, there are strict requirements It's governed by PIPEDA, which is the Personal Information Protections and Electronics Document Act. So there are stipulations in place with when you need to reach out to clients or customers because of a breach, and how quickly you need to do so, et cetera. So there are things that you need to follow, strict guidelines. And obviously, this coverage will come into play if there's a failure to destroy confidential information or a failure to comply with your privacy policy. When you have a breach like this and information gets out, you're also going to have the regulators come in, and you could be hit with administrative or regulatory proceedings and the costs associated with that. And so your policy would cover that. Any fines or penalties that are placed upon you, as well as any fines that come from the payment card industry, in addition to any regulatory bodies, as well as the government could come in and give you fines or make demands from a civil perspective, and for all the investigative stuff that needs to take place. Thirdly, media liability. This one's a little bit different, and you're not really one to think that this would come about or be in a cyber policy, but it's included in cyber policies these days because modern media activities almost always happen online. So it kind of just has become part of the broader digital risk landscape that cyber insurance is designed to cover. So that's why it's thrown in with a cyber policy. And this will protect you against copyright infringement, plagiarism, defamation, libel or slander, et cetera, and really protects you when a third party has emotional distress or outrage based on harm to their character or reputation because of media content that you've put online. Or that your business has put online. So that's kind of third-party coverage in a nutshell. Now, this is first-party coverage, as I said before, so a loss that you've had financially because of the costs associated with dealing with a breach. And this is kind of when you're going to notify a 24/7 hotline that the cyber insurance companies have, and you'll engage with their claims manager, who will then coordinate all the initial responses. You're going to get your initial advice and information from the claims manager on how to deal with the claim and how to respond to a breach attack. So these are all kind of different areas of coverage that you have. A big one is the response costs and the services that are provided. So that claims manager that you're going to engage with will also consult with external IT security consultants, and other expert and legal professionals to determine the scope of the cyber event. They're going to give you advice on how to remediate the impact of the cyber event. There could be a forensic investigation that takes place if it's reasonable and necessary, or if it's mandated by a regulatory body or by the law. And then they're obviously going to help you contain and remove any malware that's discovered on your computer systems. The cost to notify all your customers and clients who have been affected. So that could be printing and posting notices, could be sending numerous emails out, or even setting up a call center for inbound and outbound calls to manage that in relation to the breach. And there's also going to be coverage for credit monitoring services. So the cost to keep an eye on all your customer or clients' credit files and alert them if changes are being made, or they're seeing accounts open in their name, or late payments reported by creditors, et cetera. And then this is, as Andy alluded to, ransomware and extortion is a huge part of your policy, and probably one, as you'll see at a later time in my presentation, probably the most important. So ransomware is obviously a type of malware that locks down your system and encrypts the file, so you can't use it unless you pay the ransom. So there's going to be a cost with responding to an incident like this, whether it's forensics or legal guidance. You're going to have coverage for the money or the Bitcoin or the other cryptocurrency that you've paid the hacker due to the demands to get back into your system. And then any costs associated with negotiating and helping to mitigate the potential loss. So obviously, as a client and an insurance company, most of them want to try to avoid paying ransom payouts or limit them to as low as possible, not only from a cost perspective, but because when you're paying out these teams of hackers, and they are very sophisticated, they run like normal businesses. Obviously, paying them out is just going to encourage them to continue targeting organizations and kind of further distributing the ransomware. So, trying to negotiate with those hackers to lower the amount or try to get out of the ransom altogether is a huge part of the strategy that the teams at your insurance company will take. Obviously, there's going to be issues handling crisis management and public relations costs. So you'll be covered for engaging with a public relations consultant who can provide you advice on how to handle the breach and coordinate any media relations in response to the cyber attack. You can have certain individuals at your organization receive training and become spokespeople with respect to all the media communications that are going to be needed. And obviously formulating a crisis communications plan in order to reduce the damage to your brand reputation because of the cyber incidents. So all these costs and services are also covered by a robust cyber policy. When your system gets locked down and you can't use it, obviously it's going to result in an interruption of your business. And usually your policy will trigger if this has taken place for at least 8 hours or more. And it's going to cover any lost income or extra expenses that your business sustained during the downtime, costs for accountants to determine how much income you've lost. It's going to cover costs that you need, like any additional costs that you've had to fork out to continue operating so that you can avoid a shutdown. And an interesting part of coverage is also reimbursement if one of your key supply chain partners has an attack to their system and your business can't operate because of that. So that's kind of the business interruption side of things, and that comes into play, and there's a huge cost associated with that for any breach that results in a downtime that could last up to days or weeks. And accompanying this, you're obviously going to have costs to get your system back up to the way it was before the event took place. So you're going to have costs for hiring the right people to come in and either recreate your digital assets or restore them, or I guess replace them, but that's kind of tough to do, obviously. So the goal is to restore any damaged stuff. And then not only from a digital perspective, but actual hardware perspective, yes, your computer systems are still there. So you're not going to be covered in a kind of a normal sense like you would if there was a fire that took place. But if your system is rendered unusable or its integrities have been lost, then you're going to have to replace all those systems as well. And this is usually referred to as bricking. So basically you have all your hardware is there and it looks like it's usable, but it's basically shot and it can't be used any longer. So there'll be coverage for replacing those systems. And as Laura alluded to, reputational harm is a major component of a loss. So your coverage will come into play and reimburse you for any lost income that is sustained as a direct result of losing current clients and even potential future clients due to the damage of your reputation because of a cyber breach. Now, this coverage isn't indefinite. It's not going to cover you for the next decade. Usually we see a year timeline, but that can be pushed further out into a larger window. All right, so we've covered the third-party coverage, the first-party coverage. Now this is what's called cyber crime coverage. It's not usually included with every single cyber policy, but it's an additional package that you can include and that everybody should have. And it's definitely recommended to have, because this is where your own money is being stolen by the hackers. So it's not necessarily the cost for handling the breach, but it's actually the actual securities or money that has been stolen from your system or from your bank account. So obviously the most common instances of this has already been alluded to by Andy, business email compromise, social engineering, and this is where fraudsters usually spoof or hack an executive's email and then instruct the finance department or the accounting department to send money to either a client or a customer or somewhere, and it's really just going to the fraudster's bank account. Or if they manipulate one of your employees into revealing sensitive information, and then that financial information or credentials are used by the hackers to pull pull money right from your bank account or send money to the wrong account. And really, it's unauthorized transfer of money that is yours to an account that it shouldn't be going to. And so this is a huge exposure for most businesses and where we see a lot of the claims. Alongside this is what's considered invoice manipulation coverage. So if you're unable to collect money from one of your customers because they've already paid, they already think that they paid to the invoice, but it's actually gone to the fraudsters or the hackers, there'll be coverage for that. And also reimbursement that's caused by money that you sent to one of your vendors or because of the goods or services they were going to provide, and then they were never provided. So, and then obviously they were not provided because you didn't send the money to them, you sent it to the hackers. This one's a little bit more peculiar. So corporate identity theft. So obviously if the hackers get a hold of your information or your employee information, then use that to set up loans in your name or new credit cards, or they're signing contracts or agreements in your name. That sort of stuff would be covered and the costs associated with dealing with that, or removing websites that are designed to impersonate you. We don't see this one quite as much, but it's part of all cyber packages. And then a huge one is obviously theft of personal funds. So if the hackers do get into your system, because it's been compromised and they're able to steal money directly from your bank account, this is a huge exposure. Not as common as the other exposures where a human element is involved, but obviously a coverage that you want to have if a hacker does get into the system and is able to steal funds from you. Service fraud. So this is when like a telephone company or a cloud company charges you for use of their system, but you're actually not the one who's been using it, and so you've been overcharged. So there would be coverage for this as well if a hacker is using your system. And similarly with your computer system, if your resources are being used and you have no idea that it's happening, coverage for that would also be covered. So cryptojacking is just when cyber criminals will use your computer system to mine cryptocurrency, going undetected without you even knowing that they're using your system. And then botnets are just like a network of hijacked computers that are running in the background and are being used to scam and conduct cyber attacks to other people. So they're essentially just hijacking your system and putting all those costs on you while using your system. And so that's the type of coverage that would come into play. If you're a lawyer or another company who looks after client funds in escrow and the funds get stolen, there's covered for that. Or if you just, have access to some of your clients' accounts and their money gets stolen that way, there is also coverage for that. Or if you're obviously if a website is impersonating you and then a client or customer interacts with that and loses money that way, then there's also coverage for that because you're going to have to reimburse your client and then you will get reimbursed by the insurance company. So that's kind of a nutshell. So first party, third party, and cyber, that's really what makes up a robust policy. In terms of actually getting insurance, if you're just looking for a small tack-on policy to your existing commercial general liability package, then most of the time there's actually no requirements at all. But coverage on these policies are not robust, and they're definitely not anywhere near as comprehensive as a standalone package. And so that's why more and more we're seeing that being recommended to clients. So there are some tack-on packages that are decent, but at the end of the day, most of them do not have any cyber crime coverage, and we do see a lot of claims happening from that side of things. So to obtain a policy, you're really just going to have to give out the same general information that you would provide to any other insurance company that you get coverage for, whether it's commercial general liability, property coverage. You got to hand out your general information about your business, obviously the name, the size, what industry, your revenue, number of employees. But in addition to this, for getting cyber coverage, you're going to have to let them know what types of information you're collecting from clients and customers, and really the overall status of what we call your cyber hygiene and the practice that you take, whether it's from a security perspective, how often you're doing backups, authentications, protocols, etc. And I know Andy already alluded to some of these things as well as Laura, but in terms of cyber hygiene practices, I will say, just to preface this a bit, if I conducted this webinar 4 years ago, I would say that you absolutely have to have every single one of these things or you're not going to get coverage. Now that the insurance companies had kind of have a grasp on the claims and kind of just the environment altogether, these aren't necessarily absolutely required. Now, with that being said, you're going to get better prices if you do follow all these things. But there was a day and age where the insurance companies were forking out $4 in payouts for every dollar they were bringing in premium, and it was just unsustainable. So they really had to overhaul how they were doing things, and they became more active in trying to mitigate any losses from taking place. And so that's helped them kind of become more lenient and flexible in taking on clients and what clients do from a cyber hygiene perspective. So, but all of these things are important. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are some of the things that you really should be doing if you want the best bang for your buck when you are purchasing a cyber insurance policy. So what coverages matter the most? I think Andy and Laura both kind of already alluded to business email compromise and funds transfer fraud accounting for most of the cyber losses that take place. And the information that I've gathered here is from one of the top 2 cyber companies in the market, Coalition. And as you can see, 60% of the claims they deal with are related to business email compromise and funds transfer fraud. So these are by far the most take place the most often, but they're in the top 3 in terms of severity as well. Ransomware is right behind them obviously in the type of event that the frequency of events, but it is by far the most severe. As you can see, the numbers here are for Canada. And again, this is strictly for one of the top insurance companies, Coalition, but ransomware, the average loss in Canada was 665,000. Funds transfer fraud, 185,000. Business email compromise, 22. Third-party allegations. So this is when a third party is suing you because of information that has been leaked. That's average of loss of 19. And then for miscellaneous first-party losses, that was around 17. And this would be stuff that's separate from ransomware, separate from funds transfer fraud, and separate from business email compromise. It would be stuff like malware infections without data theft, or email or domain impersonation, invoice manipulation, etc. Now, a big question that comes about is how much coverage should I have? And obviously trying to figure out exactly how much is a bit tough because there's no one-size-fits-all solution, and it really depends on a multitude of things. So what industry you're in, how much revenue you have, the size of your business, what kind of sensitive information are you gathering from your clients? Is it health information? Is it just personal identifiable information? Do you have any contractual obligations where you need to have a certain limit? And obviously the risk management maturity of your business. So do you already have a very extensive cyber hygiene practice, or are you kind of just starting off? All of these kind of go into whether or not you need minimal coverage or you need maximum coverage. With that being said, I've put a little graph here or chart with some industries, prominent industries, and kind of typical range that we see. But again, every business is unique, and all the information about your business is really what goes into deciding what limit is best for you and the organization. All right, so quickly, I know we're running out of time here, so let me run through this. So if you ever need to file a claim, what can you expect? So at this point, all the best cyber companies have a 24/7 hotline that you can call, so that you're able to notify them immediately. Obviously, you can reach out to your broker as well. But your best and quickest bet is to contact that hotline, because then they're going to be notified immediately and can start the process. You're going to get quick response times and immediate coordination and action from the insurance companies. Some of them tout 5-minute turnaround times. I mean, that seems a little bit aggressive. I have seen some quick turnaround. So that is a huge thing, because every second and every minute after a cyber breach takes place, it turns into dollars and expenses. So the sooner you can get on top of it, the better. And then when you reach out to them, you're going to have instant access to experts like the breach coach, as I mentioned before, security engineers, privacy attorneys, forensic specialists, who are going to help you get things going right away. And just to give you a kind of idea of what it looks like, or the timeline of an incident and payout. So obviously you think there's an event happening, you suspect a security concern, you're going to contact your broker or them. As I said, them is your insurance company is the best bet because you're going to get the quickest turnaround. You're going to engage with them, and the claims manager will coordinate the use of counsel and vendors and make sure that all stakeholders are all connected and informed with what's going on. There's going to be an assessment and triage stage, so they're going to work with you and determine if there is sufficient reason to complete a forensics investigation. So what they'll look for is, are there legitimate logins to emails? Are there password changes? Any new accounts created? Malicious email headers, stuff like that. And so they'll take that into consideration to determine if a forensic investigation is required. And then they're going to triage any immediate security needs and deal with those right away. So if the forensics play does happen, then obviously the direction of legal counsel, there's going to be a team that comes in, they'll complete that work and any remediation activities that are needed. And then obviously the final stage recovery, the most important is you getting paid out and you getting back on your feet as a business owner, so that you can continue carrying on with how you were before the event took place. That's kind of it for me. I do have just a couple of final remarks just to bring up. As Andy alluded to, small and medium-sized businesses actually account for 95% of all cyber claims in Canada. So I know his numbers were a bit different for cyber incidents, but in terms of the insurance companies, they make up 95% of all cyber claims and just under 50% of the total incident costs. So even though there's those large companies that you see in the news who make up a huge amount of the incident costs, it really is small and medium-sized businesses who are hit the most. Mm-hmm. And obviously the reason is most small businesses lack the technical resources to deal with an attack in-house. They do not have anyone experienced enough to turn to if their systems are brought down. And so from a hacker's perspective, say if you're a hacker looking to collect $1 million, it's a lot easier to demand $50,000 from 20 small businesses than it is to go after one really large business who might already have a good means to defend itself. So I guess the question that I want to leave you guys with is, and something that you and your team should think about, is how long would your business be able to operate without a computer system and without all the data that computer system holds? And so that's it. Any questions for me, Andy, or Laura? We are open to receive them.
Thank you, Landon. I just wanted to, that's a really good question. And I wanted to throw out another interesting one that I thought of while you were presenting. Does your current IT support know what to do if you have a cyber incident? So that was an interesting chart that you had. Sometimes with IT people, they're fixers, right? They want to get in and troubleshoot. But when it's a cyber incident, it's very different when there is cyber insurance involved, because you guys steer the bus. And so it's important that IT understands they do want to get in there and control the bleed and then stop and let cyber insurance do its thing, but they have to know what they can do and what they can't do, because that can definitely affect coverage, right? If lines are crossed. So that's a really important consideration that we need to think about.
Yeah, the way I always describe it to anybody that's been hit is it's an active crime scene. So we're allowed to go in and stop the bleeding, and we have to get cyber insurance involved. Basically, a crime scene, you can't go in and start moving things around in a crime scene. You've got to put up perimeter tape, and then an investigation has to happen. And sometimes that investigation takes a fair amount of time. And so the insurance company has to come in. They have to do their investigation, make sure what's going to happen and what sort of payout there is. And during that time, not a lot can change. So yeah, think about it like an active crime scene, because that's really what it is. It's crime.
And just to throw in there that this is where an incident response plan is really important, because you don't want to be, trying to figure out how far do I go? Where's the number for the insurance company that I need to call? You want to have a plan, a comprehensive plan in place. Who does it? All of those things should be thought about before, because that's a very stressful time and not the time to be deciding what to do next. Did anybody have any questions? We just did such a good job.
So we've got our contact information up there on the screen. So if you want to contact any of the three of us, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I threw it in the chat as well. Please feel free to take advantage of that security assessment. I'll send a follow-up email with the recording if you want to share it. Thanks, Christiane. I hope it was really informative and helpful. Huge topics, right? So hard to condense it. All right. Well, we will let everybody go. Thank you for joining us, and we really hope it was time well spent. Have an awesome day and a great, weird, longish weekend. Except Monday.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care. Bye now.